Hello everybody, welcome to Perfusionist Classroom. From this session we are going to start the topic myocardial protection, which is one of the most important topic in the whole syllabus of perfusion technology and also for our practical knowledge. So this topic is going to be much more elaborated, so this will be covered in more than one part. So this is going to be our first part. So let's start the topic. First is the definition. So what is the definition of myocardial protection? As a definition of myocardial protection, we can say that it is the strategies or it is the interventions that is undertaken during preoperative, intraoperative and postoperative. In all the phases of that regarding a surgery, the time can be divided in three phases. The first phase is preoperative, that is before the surgery, intraoperative, that is during the surgery, and postoperative, that is after the surgery, the postoperative care. So the strategies, the interventions, those are taken during all three phases. During all three phases are the part of myocardial protection, or they are togetherly called myocardial protection or myocardial protective strategies. So what is the aim of myocardial protection or myocardial protective strategies? So the aim of the myocardial protection is to create a balance between supply and demand between myocardial oxygen demand and supply, to create a balance between myocardial oxygen demand and supply. Now what it will do? Firstly, it will improve the cardiac functionality as well as it will help the myocardium to withstand with the ischemia or the surgical inserts, because cardiac surgery is a major surgery, and for cardiac surgery the limiting factors to myocardial perfusion is the surgical need, the need of surgeon for surgical exposure of heart to for sufficient time to complete the surgery, and for that we have to create a ischemic condition to for a bloodless field, to provide a bloodless field to surgeon, so that the procedure for correcting the pathological condition can be done, and as well as we have to protect the heart, we have to keep the patient alive. So we have to protect the myocardium, so that after completion of surgery the recovery of patient becomes smoother, and postoperative quality of life of patient becomes as good as preoperative quality of life. Now next is the etiology. We have discussed it elaborately in the previous session, so I am not going to elaborate it. Just for a recap, there myocardial injury can be three types. First is mechanical, that is the surgical stress, the malhandling of heart, the incision on the heart, etc. These are included in the mechanical injury. Next is the pharmacological injury, that is cardioplegia solutions, some other drugs like inotropic agents and the anesthetic agents, and next is the ischemia and ischemia reperfusion injury, and the consequences are stunning. This was also elaborated in the previous session. So again, for a recap, stunning, it is reversible injury, and it is fully reversible injury, and following that the consequence is hibernation. It is partly reversible or partially reversible, and following that, if the protection strategy is not appropriate and the ischemia is more severe, then necrosis and apoptosis, that is the cell death. So next we will see the myocardial protective strategies. So first we will see the preoperative strategies of myocardial protection. As I have already mentioned that myocardial protective strategies are taken from the very first phase of the total operative period, that is the preoperative. First is the preoperative period. In the preoperative period, the first thing which is done is those drugs, the patients, usually the patients coming for cardiac surgery, going for cardiac surgery, they are already on some drugs preoperatively. So before cardiac surgery, among those drugs which are associated with negative outcome with respect to cardiac surgery, those are discontinued. Next, the steps which are taken, the aim of the steps is first to increase the oxygen supply, and next is to decrease the oxygen demand, and next are associated with some metabolic reduction of metabolic stress. So first, to increase the oxygen supply, what is done? The delivery of oxygen to the patient is increased. Coronary blood flow is tried to increase the coronary blood flow, usually with vasodilator therapy. And next, from our side, from perfusionist side, sometimes IVP is used preoperatively to increase the oxygen supply and decrease the demand, because you all know IVP inflates during diastole and deflates during systole. This deflation during systole decreases the afterload, and so the oxygen demand is reduced, and as it inflates during diastole, it causes increased diastolic pressure, so that the coronary blood flow is increased and it increases the oxygen supply. So sometimes, especially in case of patients with CAD, in more vulnerable myocardium, we use IVP before surgery. Next is reduction of oxygen demand. How can it be done? First is to optimize the heart rate where it is proper measure, not always, but in cases of, most commonly in cases of patients with CAD where myocardium is already ischemic, with reduction of heart rate, with optimization of heart rate, the workload on the myocardium will decrease, so the demand will be decreased. So optimization of heart rate is done with beta blockers. Next is to optimize the preload and afterload with medication, and as well as sometimes intra-aortic balloon pump. And the last strategy is to reduce the circulating catecholamines, reduce the amount of circulating catecholamines with pre-medication with drugs like beta blockers, anxiolytics, etc. So anxiolytics are basically used to reduce the stress on the patient, so that the release of catecholamines are reduced. And next are metabolic optimization or metabolic suppression. First, the first strategy is to increase the glucocellular glycogen store, improve the cellular glycogen store, because it has been observed that with increasing cellular glycogen store, the outcome of operation, the outcome of cardiac surgery has been improved. So it is done with GIK solution, that is glucose, insulin and potassium. This is a special solution which is infused preoperatively, and it is seen that with preoperative use of glucose, insulin, potassium solution, the outcome of cardiac surgery is sometimes better. Next is inhibition of free fatty acid metabolism, and last is the free radical scavenger. Free radical scavengers like allopurinol is used. So these are the strategies commonly taken at the preoperative phase. Next we will see the most important phase, the most important strategies. They are also the most important strategies, that is the strategies taken during the intraoperative phase. So let's start the intraoperative phase. The next phase is intraoperative phase. Now intraoperative phase again can be divided into three phases: pre-bypass, during bypass and after the bypass or post-bypass phase. So in pre-bypass phase, the protective strategies which are taken are from the anesthetic side, usually from the anesthetic side, and this is called anesthetic preconditioning. Now in case of anesthetic preconditioning, several drugs and inhalation agents are used to, again the principle is to maintain a supply and demand balance. So several drugs and anesthetic agents are used. The first is the volatile anesthetics or inhalation agents. So it has been seen that with use of inhalation agents, better recovery of myocardium's function after cardiac surgery is commonly encountered. But there are some problems with volatile anesthetics. The common problems are decreasing arterial and coronary perfusion pressure, and they also cause dose-related depression of myocardial contractility, and this is in the pre-bypass period. It also affects the electrophysiology of heart or electrophysiological function of heart. Next are the intravenous agents. There are many intravenous agents that are used for induction and maintenance of anesthesia during cardiac surgery, and many of them are associated with cardioprotective effects like propofol. After that, the phase which will come is the during bypass or intra-bypass phase, and during that phase all the protective strategies are taken from the perfusionist side. So let's see those interventions. The first strategy which we undertake during bypass is hypothermia, and this strategy is used since 1950s, almost from 1950s. So the techniques are, first is topical cooling or surface cooling. So it is done by shallow technique, and the technique is to drip and prompt removal of cold saline, or which we call the ice slush, from the epicardial surface, and that will reduce the myocardial temperature, and that will reduce the myocardial oxygen demand. The drawback of this technique is the ice slush may cause injury to phrenic nerve through prolonged exposure. The next technique is systemic cooling, which we usually performs by controlling the blood temperature through the hemotherm or the heater cooler unit. Here also one very important thing to remember is that patient's temperature and arterial outlet temperature should never be, the difference between patient temperature and arterial outlet temperature should never be more than 10 degree. So for different surgeries we use different degree of hypothermia. There are the normal temperature of human body is 37 degree, and when the temperature is 32 to 35 degree it is called mild hypothermia. 32 to 28 is called moderate. 28 to 18 is severe, and less than 18 is profound. So for different surgeries we use different degree of hypothermia. Usually for ASDs we use usually for ASD or CABG, that is coronary artery bypass grafting and atrial septal defect repair, we usually use mild hypothermia, that is 32, almost 32 to 35 degree. We usually pulse up to 32 degree for VSD, and valvular cases we use moderate hypothermia, usually 30 to 28 degree. For complex congenital repairs like TOF or TGA, when the complex intracardiac repairs are done, in those cases severe hypothermia is used, that is 28 degree to up to 18 degree. Patient temperature is down up to 18 degree. And for aortic surgeries, that is mainly aortic arch repair or aortic arch replacement, the profound hypothermia and profound hypothermia is induced so that we can use the technique which is called deep hypothermic circulatory arrest. That is, after reaching that profound hypothermia we cease the whole circulation for a limited period of time. Usually it is tolerated up to 45 minutes, and in those cases profound hypothermia is used. And the last strategy is the cold cardioplegia, to infuse the cold cardioplegia to reduce the myocardial temperature, and ideal myocardial temperature should be less or equal to 12 degree. Now the cold cardioplegia, its advantages and disadvantages will be elaborated in the later part. The next strategy is the cardioplegia. Before that we will see some advantages and disadvantages of hypothermia. So these are the advantages and disadvantages of disadvantages of hypothermia. So in advantages, first point, that is hypothermia reduces the metabolic rate in myocardial cells. So obviously if the rate of metabolism in myocardial cells are reduced, then the oxygen requirement will be reduced. So the ischemic tolerance of myocardial cells will be increased because the demand is reduced. So if there is reduced supply, then it can withstand that reduced supply. So this is how actually the hypothermia acts, or hypothermia affects myocardium in a protective way. The next is it reduces the oxygen demand, and again this reduced demand will allow us to reduce the CPB flow, that is the pump flow. And with reduced pump flow, what will happen? The return from non-coronary collaterals will be reduced. As the systemic flow is reduced, the return from the non-coronary collaterals will be also reduced, and with that reduced return from non-coronary collaterals, so what will happen? There will be reduced LV distension, and there will be reduced chance of rewarming of myocardium, because with LV distension and with rewarming of myocardium, the metabolism, the rate of metabolism will increase, and then there will be ischemic injury, the more ischemic injury. So if we are able to reduce the flow, there will be reduced return and reduced chance of LV distension and rewarming of myocardial injury. And next are the disadvantages. The first disadvantage is left shift of oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. We all know what is oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. So with left shift of oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve, the affinity of hemoglobin of oxygen to oxygen is increased. That means hemoglobins are more strongly attached to oxygen. Then what will happen? That it will uptake the oxygen from the lungs, but when it will reach at the tissue level, it will not release the oxygen and supply the tissue. So there will be reduced oxygen supply to tissue because the affinity of hemoglobin towards oxygen is higher. So the release of oxygen will be more tough. So there will be reduced supply of oxygen to tissue. Next is increased blood viscosity. We all know that with reduction in temperature, viscosity of any liquid is increased. So the viscosity of blood will also increase, and due to increased blood viscosity, what will happen? Perfusion at tissue level, at microcirculation will hamper. Next is vasoconstriction. With hypothermia, vasoconstriction will occur, and in combination with increased blood viscosity, it will more and more hamper the circulation at the level of microvasculature, and it will affect the perfusion, the tissue perfusion. Next, as the vascular tone is changed due to hypothermia, as the vasoconstriction is occurring, it will hamper the autoregulation of our different systems, and it will also hamper the autoregulation of coronary circulation. And the next is it will increase the bypass time, and we all know more the patient, more the pump time, there will be more injury. Now how it increases the time? The first, after going to bypass, we have to wait to reach the target temperature, and again after completion of surgery, after completion of the main surgery, the main procedure, again we have to wait to rewarm the patient to normothermia. So there will be more time will be taken other than the main surgery. So it will increase the pump time, and thus it will increases the injury towards the organ. To avoid making this session more and more elongated, I am finishing this session here. In the next session, we will be discussing the most interesting topic, that is the cardioplegia, and with that some other strategies. So this is all for today, and I hope this session was understandable for you. If you like it, please let me know by commenting, by hitting the like button and subscribing the channel. So this is all for this session. Goodbye, thank you, and take care.